Is joining us for today's webinar, which is brought to you in partnership with the BarthHaas Group. Hannes is the Field Services Account Manager, and he's going to be providing some insights today into this year's hop crop, which we hear is just wrapping up. And he's going to be also giving us some updates on the hop market. So what to expect over the coming year for your hop supply, what you need to do, what you need to be looking for, and how to secure secure your best hops. So after Hannes's presentation, which will last about 20 minutes, we'll move into a Q&A session, which will be for the live viewers only. We're going to have a few polls during that as well to keep it interactive, so we can find out a little bit more about what are the most popular hops that are being used in the region at the moment, whether people are contracting their hops or not. So we'll get a bit more information and keep it as interactive as we can. So Hannes, I'm going to pass it over to you. If anybody has any questions, please put them through the Q&A tab in the bottom. And once Hannes is finished with his presentation, we'll get to those questions. So Hannes, it's all yours. Andre and I are going to close off our cameras now, so it's all yours.
All right, thank you very much, Charles. Thank you for the nice introduction as well. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen. Just let me know in case it doesn't work, but I think it should work. We tested it already. And as you can see here, we will talk about the hop market today. Of course, the goal is to let you know how the harvest of 2021 went down and let you know how the hop market is doing in general. But as Charles already alluded to, I also want to give you some practical advice on hop forward contracting and what varieties look good in this year's spot market. So let's jump straight into the agenda today. It's kept very simple. We're going to look at the hop supply. So at the supply side of the market, then we're going to look at the hop demand. And then overlaying those two, we're going to look at the alpha acid balance that results out of supply and demand. I'm going to start with the hop growing season in Germany in 2021. We have two main factors that we're looking here today, which are precipitation and temperature. Precipitation, which you see on the left side in calendar weeks, and on the right side, the temperature development. It's very important to mention that we had a very dry and also cold March and April. That is not necessarily a bad thing, because in April, the hop growers have to do all the groundwork and string the wires and train the hops. So it's good to have dry conditions. But this year, especially combined with the cold weather, we could already see the hop plants lacking behind in their growth in early June by 7 to 10 days. So this was really a little bit concerning for the industry, and we didn't know what to expect from the upcoming crop. And it was just a little bit more conservative regarding the hops of 2021. But then going into July, we had not only rising temperatures, as you can see here, but we also had some more rain and precipitation. So that was really positive. And yes, the hop plants were able to catch up a little bit with their growth, and the July was able to compensate for a little bit of the slower growth early in the year. Then in August and September, we had relatively low temperatures and a lot of humidity, a lot of rain. But a lot of varieties really seem to enjoy those growing conditions, especially the older land varieties that we have in Germany really turned out well. And in the end of the day, we have above average yields, I would say, and very good hop qualities as well. So here you can see two pictures of a hop field. I think this was 1 week prior to harvest, really looking nice with good weather in the Hallertau. Okay, so next let's look at the acreage development in Germany. So here we are looking at the winners and losers of 2020 versus 2021. So we are looking at the acreage development here. In Germany, the total acreage declined by around 85 hectares, which represents around 0.4% of the total acreage, so not a lot of movement in the total acreage. But as we can see on the winner side, we have the high alpha variety Hercules, increasing by 257 hectares, but we also have varieties like Polaris, Accoya, and Perle increasing their acreage. Accoya is still a fairly new variety, just being planted the second year. Then on the loser side, we see varieties like Hersbrucker, which we actually didn't expect to see up there, and also Magnum and Saphir. And at the very top, I accumulated the so-called flavor varieties for the German market, just to showcase how the trend of decreasing acreage for flavor varieties in Germany is still going on. So flavor varieties are, for example, Pilmelon, Mandarina Bavaria, but also varieties like Calista or Ariana. So now we are looking at the yield, which is the purple line, and the acreage in hectares, which is the green line on this chart. And as I already mentioned, so slightly decreasing acreage, producing a better yield than the previous year, means that we are looking at an overall good above average crop. So the total yield in tons is over 47,000 tons, which is quite impressive. So next, let's look at the alpha values. I really wanted to show you some numbers today. Unfortunately, we don't have the final figures yet because there just haven't been enough analysis of the raw hops. So those are still indicative alpha acid values, but I think they can still give you a very good idea of how yes, the varieties would look like in the alpha acid contents. In the very left column, you can see some key varieties that are important for the market. And then next to it, you can see the 10-year average, which is always calculated. And next to it, you see the values of 2021. Yes, it's obvious that most varieties are performing this year at least average or clearly above average. The high alpha varieties, Hallertau Magnum and Hercules, with really good alpha acid values of 18% and 15.8%. But also a variety like Perle with 9% is a really, really good outcome. If you look at the volatility of the previous years, for example, in 2018, only 5.5% of alpha acid. So we are looking at a very good Perle crop as well. Also a good hop to buy in the spot market, I think. And one of the best outcomes this year is at the very bottom, is the Sarza hop from the Czech Republic, with an average alpha acid of 4.0%. And that's just, yes, an outstanding result. And it's mainly due to the fact that also in the Czech Republic, we had really humid and relatively cold August and September. And Sarza, as an old land variety, really seemed to enjoy those conditions. And if you have a really hot and dry summer, you can be sure that you're not going to have a good Sarz crop. So I can just recommend to each and every brewer who is looking into Sarz to maybe not only contract their needs for the brewing year of 2022, but maybe even beyond that, because it's not very likely that we're going to see such a good Sarz crop again in the next years. Okay, so this table might look a little bit overwhelming at first, but it's not about the detail here, it's about the overall trend. And what we see here are the contract rates in Germany. And in the hop industry, for those of you who are not familiar with forward contracting, we have something called forward contracting in place since the 1950s. So it has been really proven over the past decades that it's vital for the industry. And what the trading companies are basically doing is giving forward contracts to hop growers from 4 up to 10 years to give them security of their investment. And on the other side, give forward contracts to brewers also free up to 10 years to give them security of their hop supply. This is especially necessary in the hop industry because when you look at other crops, like for example grain, a grower could shift his variety on a year-to-year basis and still expect stable yields. But for hop growing, it's just very different because if you plant a new variety, it takes up to 3 years to get to the full yield. So the grower really needs some security that he can sell his hops that he has put in the ground in the upcoming years. And what we can see here now is that for the next 5 years, most of the hops in the German market are already contracted. So this all doesn't matter too much if we have such a good crop as this year. But if we look at worse harvest, then the spot market is going to be very tight and the prices will go up significantly. And it could even be the possibility that you can't get your hops on certain can't get your hands on certain varieties. Excuse me. So I can just recommend to brewers to look into forward contracting because in many cases it makes a lot of sense for all parties, so not just for the growers but for the brewers as well. So next, let's look at the United States. I will mainly focus on Germany and the United States here today. That is due to the mere fact that those two hop-growing countries are dominating the overall market and represent around 70% of the worldwide hop acreage and around 77% of the worldwide hop yield and around 85% of the worldwide alpha acid yield. So that just underlines how important those two countries are for the hop market, and they really dictate the market condition that we are seeing. So just a few sentences regarding the growing season in the United States. We were off to a really hot start in the US, and in early June we were already seeing temperatures that Yakima shouldn't see in August. So this was really concerning for the industry because no one knew what to expect and how the hop plants might react to this heat that hasn't been seen before. And it's also very difficult to tell if you don't have those data points, if you don't have the hop cones out yet and the hops are still working their way up on the wire. It's very hard to predict how the hop quality is going to be affected in the end of the day. So the good news is that most hops seem to enjoy the heat. Just the babies, so the newly planted hops in their first year performed a little bit worse than in the previous years, but overall the crop is really looking good as in yield, but also in hop quality. So regarding the acreage development, which you can see on the slide that is up right now, we have a net increase of approximately 847 hectares, which is 4% of the overall growing region in the US. And on the left side, the winners, we have the usual suspects. So we have varieties like CZECH and Mosaic, who are still gaining in popularity and who just give very good returns to growers. That's why they're putting more on the ground. CZECH with a plus of 403 hectares, but also Mosaic with a plus of 355 hectares. And we have some fairly new varieties here, Strata, but also Talos. Talos is also a very, very new variety coming out of the HBC breeding program. I think it used to be HBC 692. And it's a very interesting hop, I think. I really like it because it's, of course, it's very citrusy with bergamot notes and also nice floral character, but it also has some woody qualities. So the balance overall, it's just a very interesting hop that you can use in your brews. Then we have the public variety Cashmere here with plus of 144 hectares. On the loser side, we have the main losers Centennial and then the high alpha group of CTC, which stands for Columbus, Tomahawk, and Zeus, both declining by 280 hectares. And we also have Nugget, Summit, and Amarillo here. What you can already see is that the trend in the US with aroma varieties still increasing in acreage and high alpha varieties declining in acreage, which has been going on for many years now. We can also see that the proprietary varieties are still gaining a lot of acreage. So there is, yes, a kind of rebalancing within the aroma category with varieties like Centennial declining, but varieties like Citra and Mosaic inclining in acreage, increasing in acreage. Okay, so I think this slide is very interesting because here we see the overall varietal acreage that we have in the United States. And if you just look at Citra and Mosaic, they already represent already 1/3 of the total acreage in the US. And that's very impressive, I think. And then you have varieties like Cascade with 7% or Centennial with 4% that have been not too many years ago major varieties in the US and are now down to 7% and 4%. All right, so as I already mentioned, the acreage increased by around 4% to 24,579 hectares. And we're not only looking at a record acreage, but also at a record yield of 52,680 tons, which is a very good result. One more growing region that I want to mention is the Czech Republic. Of course, also because SARS is very, it's just very present on the international market, but also because the result was so good this year. So at a stable acreage, we are looking at a record yield of more than 8,000 tons. So this is just very good for the Czech Republic as a growing region. And this means that we're going to have a very good spot market for Czech hops, like, for example, SARS. Okay, so if you put all of this together, we are looking for crop of 2021 at an overall acreage of 63,140 hectares and a yield of 129,320 tons. So this is not the all-time record yield, but it's still a very good yield. So next I want to move on to the demand side of the market. Here we are mainly looking at beer output. So as we can see here, in 2020, the beer output declined by around 4.9%. And early in 2020, when the corona pandemic hit and there were so many lockdowns, there were worse scenarios on the table. So the industry was talking about -9% to -14% as well. So 4.9% is still significant, but it's not as bad as it was expected for some time. Okay, so more interestingly, let's look at some single country developments. Yes, really outstanding here is the United Kingdom with -14.5%, but also China with -9.4% in beer output. And then on the other hand, you have countries like Brazil, where you didn't have that many lockdowns and just a very different political approach, I would say, to the pandemic. And here we can see a plus of almost 1% for the beer output. And then in the very right column, you see the beer output of craft. And here it doesn't look that good because, as all of you know, most of craft beer is consumed in the on-trade market, so in restaurants, bars, and brew pubs, and so on. And just made the craft sector be more affected by the pandemic than other breweries. But I think that a lot of craft breweries managed to use like the D2C, the direct-to-consumer channel, a little bit more, and online sales to compensate for some of those losses. So this slide is really interesting, I think, because here we can see the hop dosage in grams of alpha per hectoliter, so per 100 liter. This is a very important key figure for the market because, of course, the beer output itself doesn't bring you to the whole hop demand that is out there. So you have to combine it with the hop dosage that we see for the overall market to get a realistic number for the overall hop demand. So due to the pandemic in 2020, we've seen a slight decrease in hop dosage, but the overall trend of increasing hop dosages is expected to continue. So for 2021, we predict approximately 59 grams per hectoliter in hop dosage on average. If you just look at this chart, it looks like the hop dosage has been increasing forever, that it hasn't been different ever since. But if you look at the bigger picture, you see that that's not the case at all. So the 20th century has been mainly all about increasing efficiencies in the brew house, and also about putting less flavorful and less hop forward beers on the market. Just in 2008 or 2007, 2008, this trend was turned around, and the consumers were looking at more hop forward flavorful beers again. And of course, this is also partly thanks to the craft beer trend. And that's a very positive development. And just from consumer's perspective, I think that nowadays there are a lot of hop forward beers on the market, and that's just nice to see. Okay, so this results in the hop demand that we are looking at. And of course, due to the pandemic in 2020, there's been a dip, but in 2021, we expect to be up to more than 11,000 tons of BarthHaas again. So putting all of it together, we're going to look at something that is called the alpha acid balance in the industry. And yeah, a lot of work goes into making this market model, and this is what it looks like. This may look a little bit complicated, but I will just break it down for you, because actually it's quite easy to understand. At the top, you can see the crop year of the harvest, and at the bottom, you can see the calendar year, so the brewing year. And the reason why we always compare the crop year to the following brewing year is because if you think about it, let's just take the example of 2019. The crop of 2019 is harvested in September, late September and early October of 2019, and until the hops are processed and yeah, just also shipped to the brewers and then end up in a brew, most of the hops are used during 2020. So this means that it would make no sense comparing the supply of 2019 to the demand of 2019. So we always have to pick the year ahead. And I do not even want to talk about this too long, because I think it's very obvious what we can see here. We are in an oversupply situation for just at the current state. And this means that we have a good spot market. And this also means that we are looking at quite competitive prices. So that's a good thing for the brewer. But as I already mentioned, the volatility of the hop harvests is just, yes, really strong. And that's why forward contracting still makes a lot of sense, because there could be a bad harvest just around the corner. And then it's not a lot of fun to look for certain hops in the spot market. Okay, that's it so far from my hop market update. And I would pass the word back to Charles so he can moderate the upcoming Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Hannes. Some great insights into the market there. So Andre's going to be joining us as well for this the next part of the session. So those of you who are watching on our recording on our YouTube channel, we're going to stop here